What is going on today, guys? Tomcat here, and today we are back in Spin Tires for something new. We're going to be doing a battle on the hill, and I've actually come up with a circuit. I actually spent a little bit of time coming up with this circuit where we can take any kind of vehicles we want around it and compare them in all sorts of different ways. We've got a downhill section, a very steep downhill section. We've got a water crossing. We've got mud. We've got a hill climb. We've even got rock crawling at the end. And it's a really cool way to compare vehicles, and I figured the coolest way to start off would be to compare two different YJs. So I've got Spun in Darkness's YJ Flat Fender, and the other red YJ, which you guys saw at the beginning, and you'll get to see the differences between these two Jeeps and really see kind of the differences of how they perform along this course. So the first part being the downhill, the steep downhill. We've got it in low 1, and it just creeps down. Keep in mind, I am literally full throttle right now, so there is no issue at all with extreme low gearing coming down these hills. It really holds you back. You don't even have to touch your brakes. It's actually really, really nice when they have a super low 1. Now, some people think that low 1 is for climbing, and in some vehicles it is, but in most vehicles you're going to use low 2 and low 3 for climbing and low 1 for downhill, like extreme downhill, because generally it works better that way. Now, the next part of the course is pretty much the start of the water crossing. We've got a little bit of a downhill section down through kind of like a muddy area that kind of loops in around this dead tree and then crosses the first part of the river and then goes across again to the second part of the river where you have to actually hop up over the river's edge, which is actually kind of hard in some vehicles. You have to have a decent bit of ground clearance to actually be able to hop up over it properly. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can go across the river and then stick it in low and try to crawl up, or you can do what I like to do and throw it in high, bomb across the river, and then scramble for traction once you get to the other side. You guys will see what I mean. Basically have it floored and just slide the Jeep around until you grab traction, pull up, and you're good to go. Now the next section is a kind of woodland section where it's one of those transition sections, basically. No real trail. You basically, and I actually almost made a wrong turn, but you kind of go through here through the woods, turn right, and kind of come up through this little muddy section. It's not really muddy yet, and you guys will see that in a second, but as you can see, the interior of the Jeep is already quite dirty. And then right here, where there's a little bit of logging that's been done, you kind of crawl through the area with the stumps, and then that's when you get to the mud. Now, once you get to the mud, the thing is, before you get there, you kind of want to make sure that you don't get hung up on any of the stumps, because if you get hung up on a stump or a fallen tree, it can be really, really frustrating. It really can. I tried to get a little flex moment there by putting my e-brake on, and it didn't really work. But this is where you drop into the mud, and this mud is really, really deep, especially for this being one of the stock maps. This is really challenging mud, and it's a proper mud pit here. It really is. And when you're dealing with mud this thick, I suggest low 2 or low 3. There's really not that big of a speed difference between the two. The only big difference is once you get down here into the river, I suggest just keeping it in low. I tried to do it in high, but it doesn't really work because it's all mud. It's all slick mud even under the water, so you're really not going to get any kind of traction anyway, and you're better off leaving it in low 2 or low 3, climbing up the other side, and preparing yourself for the hill climb. Well, I say hill climb. This is the muddy hill climb. This is technically still the mud section because there's a muddy hill climb and then there's an actual hill climb. And since this was my first time actually running this course with this Jeep, I wasn't exactly sure the areas that it would be able to go in and out of high and stuff like that. And I found out pretty quick that sticking it in high, going up this hill, it doesn't really want to do it. I mean, sure, it gets it. It sits there and just eats, but the thing is, you're just going to spin and just toss mud everywhere. And low is really your only option here. Put it this way, it's so much more reliable to try and run this section in low that you can't really go wrong with it. Now, just to comment about this particular Jeep real quick, I love the way flat fender YJs look. A good, clean, flat fender YJ is such a awesome vehicle in my opinion. It just like looks so right. And I don't know, like, a lot of you guys that might be watching, I'm sure you guys are Jeep people, and some Jeep people have certain opinions on YJs that they like. It's kind of a love it or hate it Jeep, Whereas, you know, like some other Jeeps are kind of, some people are whatever on certain types of Jeeps, but the YJ is definitely one of those love it or hate it Jeeps. Some people just hate the square headlights. They just straight up hate it for the square headlights. I don't have a problem with the YJ. I think it's actually a really good platform, and if you look into the community, there's a lot of people that use the YJs for crawler projects because they're relatively cheap to buy, kind of as a, you know, kind of as a trail rig type thing, but there's also a lot of parts out there from companies like, I don't know, I could just pull out like a random company that makes Jeep parts. Say you want, I don't know, say you wanted body armor, and you wanted, say, I don't know, you could look at Poison Spider, you could look at, oh god, what's that other one that I'm thinking of right now? Metal Cloak. There's so many different people that make stuff for the YJ as a platform that you can't really, like, there's nothing that you can find that you won't, there's nothing you can think of that you won't be able to get or make for the YJ as a platform. The only difference I do prefer is this is a hardtop Jeep, and I'm a fan of open-top Jeeps. Open-top, obviously, with a roll bar. I mean, I don't like open-top, because if you roll that over, you're, well, in a bit of a bad way. No, if you have a proper full cage, a proper seat, proper harness, I mean, you're pretty much okay if your Jeep goes over. This is probably the hardest section, though, on the entire run. This section right here, because you've got two trees you've got to angle between, and then you've got that little sapling there that I was trying to figure out a good route to get around it, and I think I eventually pretty much just pushed it over, and I've realized that that was the best course of action anyway, the best way to approach it, and you just keep going up the hill. And this is where the circuit kind of gets a little bit iffy, but I think once we make a full lap, you guys will have a much better understanding of how this circuit actually works. So you want to work your way up to the left of the dead tree and in between some of these saplings. And keep in mind, this is, for most vehicles, this is going to be a low 2 only kind of section. You're going to be struggling for grip, and it's going to be low 2 only. You will make it. I have made it without the winch completely. But there are some vehicles that will not get up here at all without a winch. Now, I'm not going to actually reveal which one of those I'm not going to reveal what one of those vehicles is because I might very much upset a certain community, but we might reserve that for later. Now, you do actually end up bypassing the edge of the map a little bit with this circuit, and that's why it can be a little bit tricky to do. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think with this run, with this YJ, I didn't winch. The other YJ, I think I winched. Well, no, I don't know. Did I winch? I don't know. We'll find out. We will. But I might be thinking of a different run entirely. I'm not sure. But the big rock right there, the big rock section to the right, that's going to be our rock crawling section. And we're just going to climb relatively close to it. And then once we get to the edge of the map, you'll see that we actually angle ourselves up around the tree. And really, just the fact that this is where this Jeep really shines in its ability to climb and flex and grip. It literally hooks up onto that rock. Now, I get that we're glitching through it, and it's a thing. It's spin tires. It happens. But this has more than enough grip to hook up to that rock and just go. We were in low 3 the whole way. Didn't have to put it in high. And it just really just kind of mountain goated its way right up. Now, the next little section is a bit of a drop-off. You kind of have to angle the Jeep perfectly. Otherwise, especially in some other vehicles, you have a real chance of rolling here. This is a very, very high probability of rolling. Probably the highest probability on the whole course. Well, no, definitely the highest probability of rolling on the whole course, in my opinion anyway. And then once you're down, you kind of wind your way through the woods a little bit. The trail gets really, really, really tight, and then you'll see how we wind up right back where we started at the garage. And you'll see why I really like this circuit, and I kind of tried a couple of other different designs of the circuit itself, and ended up really liking this general idea, this general way of doing it, because it's a really fun little circuit. It's a really fun thing to just kind of do laps around with different vehicles, because it's a quick way to expose a vehicle to so many different types of terrain and really get a handle on what that vehicle can do. So we've got the flat fender YJ back, and we're going to give the red open-top YJ a shot. Now, the open-top YJ is a little bit different. I actually do not remember who actually made the mod, but what I do know is the tires are wider, and I feel like it's a little bit faster. It feels like it could be a little bit faster just from my period of driving it. But the only thing is, it doesn't have as much flex, and that you'll see later on really becomes a issue. It's got the power advantage, but the suspension flex is definitely not there. If you're looking for an advantage on suspension flex, that absolutely goes to the flat fender YJ. So it really comes down to what you're going to be using it for. I mean, if you're going to be wanting a rock crawler, trail rig, the flat fender YJ, that's going to be your bet. But if you're looking for a little bit more of a kind of multi-purpose Jeep that's fast, maybe you want a fast scout vehicle for scouting cloaking areas on maps where you're going to log, then like where you're going to do logging and log delivery and stuff like that, lumber delivery, definitely check out the red YJ, because as you'll see when we go through the river, I mean, this thing gets crazy. It gets going right about now. It digs for a minute. It starts to dig, and then it inches its way, and then it inched its way up and then fell back a little bit, and I was like, oh crap, don't do this to me now, don't do this to me now. I really do not want to have to try this again. And then it hopped right up. Well, it wasn't that I didn't want to try it again. It was more along the lines of I didn't want to have to winch it, because winching right there would kind of suck, and that would be more of a driver error than a vehicle error if you had to winch right there, because if you get the right line, you can just pop right up onto it. And I know I had a slightly better line with the flat fender YJ. I mean, this one slid around a little bit more before it went up, and that could also have to do with the grip of the tires. But once we got down to the mud, things were actually kind of interesting, because this took to the mud a little bit easier than the flat fender YJ did. And it's kind of interesting because this went through mud at about the same place, but it spun a lot more. So it was kind of even in the mud. There weren't really any issues with mud per se with either Jeep, but I was trying to figure out if there was one that was better than the other in mud, and I couldn't really come to a conclusion on it. It was kind of just one of those things where you're like, well, they both work. You know, they both work in the mud. They both work in different ways, but at the same time, they both work. Now, continuing up the mud section, I wanted to use this opportunity to do some shout outs on Instagram to you guys. And let me just go ahead and we'll just jump right into it. We've got, let's see, we've got Ybuck118, we've got Josh _H _510, we've got Dorian Blasco, we've got, let's see here, Big Mac 001, we've got Scott 3075, we've got KESO041, we've got Mr. Brown BR11, and let's see, Carter _Blaze, and let's see, we'll do one more, that's Justin _. So that will be our Instagram shoutouts for today. And actually, no, I do also want to give another shout out to Crazy Canadian 37. He did like a little Photoshop of my car in white, which actually, you know what? That looks really, really cool. I like that a lot. Crazy Canadian 37, if you're watching right now, that's an awesome Photoshop, and I love the way my car looks in white. I prefer red, obviously, but dude, that car looks awesome in white. I love it. I've seen some white FRSs out there that look really clean, but damn, that looks awesome. White with the black wheels, I love it. Now, back to the YJ itself. This is where it starts to kind of slow down, because you can see the lower ride height starts to make it plow. And then once we get to the hill climb, you'll see that it doesn't have quite the level of grip that the flat fender had. And that becomes an issue that's very apparent later on as we go. Dirt-wise, it grips up really well. It gets hung up on a tree slightly, but pulls itself over actually quicker than the flat fender did. Now, when I say that it had issues later on, let me just zero in on what I'm getting at. The red YJ has better grip on dirt, and the flat fender has better grip on rocks. And it all comes down to the way the vehicle is coated and the way the tires are coated and stuff like that, but it also comes down to what you're going to be using it for and for what maps you're going to be using it for. if you're on a map where you're trying to scout out a lot of areas that involve rocks and rock crawling or rock climbing, anything of that nature, that Flat Fender is going to be the way for you. But if you got a lot of, like, you know, a lot of dirt hills and trails and stuff like that, this red YJ is not a bad bet. But you'll see when we start to get closer to the rocks, you'll see how we start to have issues getting up, and then we end up having to kind of resort to other methods to actually get up onto the rock itself. And considering the fact that this is a little bit wider, whereas the Flat Fender was able to angle its way up, this doesn't have as much flex, nor is it as narrow, which means it is actually getting caught on the tree and on one side and sliding off the rock on the other side, and basically wedging itself in between these two obstacles with very little options as far as which way it could go. So it was kind of an odd situation to be in. We eventually got out of it, but it was a little bit of an odd situation because, number one, it's fun because it really does make you think, and it makes you think like you're actually off-roading. Like, what would I do? What would I do here if I was, if I was in this kind of situation? And that's where Spintires really shines, because a lot of people have been complaining about how the new update lowers the grip levels and makes it so you can't do these, these massive rock crawling things real easy and stuff like that. I actually think it's kind of fun because it makes you think like more like a real off-roader would have to think, because like, can I get over that, or will I slide off? Will I slide off and roll? Will I be able to get enough speed to get up it in a higher gear? Or will I have to use a lower gear and take a specific line and crawl it? Or will I have to winch? And that's what I was talking about having to resort to in the end with this thing, because it did not have the flex or the grip or the ability to get around that tree. And I can't remember if we were able to... Yeah, okay, yeah, we got up fine. Thing is, I put it in... I put the e-brake on, and it started to slide for a second, and I was like, okay. It's a little bit too much like a real YJ. The rocks are a little bit iffy, too. They're a little glitchy. Just gotta drop down, back off the other side of the rock. And actually, this one did not come anywhere near as close to rolling as the Flat Fender did. And I think the only reason for that is because I took a slightly better line. I would say the line was slightly better on that one, personally. I think it just was a little bit safer and a little bit more in tune with what the Jeep could handle. I think the line I took in the Flat Fender was a little bit more ballsy, just because of the fact that I knew it had the extra flex. But nonetheless, it tripoded for a bit. But that's the course, again, with the red YJ. And I think it's a really cool way to compare these vehicles. If you guys have any vehicles you want me to compare, let me know in the comment section below. And if you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to click that like button. Tell me in the comment section down below what you guys thought of it. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to smash that subscribe button for more daily videos like this one. And I will see you guys in the next one. Talk to you guys later, and I hope you guys enjoyed.